Welcome everybody to this month's Developer User Group Meetup. My name is Robert. I'm one of the organizers here. Before we hand over to Bradley, just a couple short announcements. First one is we want to say a big thank you to OfficeIn. They help sponsor the user group every month. If you scan that QR code or go to that URL, you can fill in a quick form and they will select, I think they select like 5 people every month or something like that. And they send you a bunch of OfficeIn swag, like t-shirts and stickers and stuff. It's really awesome. I'll put the link in the URL in the chat in a moment as well if you want to get it there. So a big thank you to OfficeIn for sponsoring us and helping us give great things to the user group. And we also want to say a big thanks to JetBrains, who also give us 3 full JetBrains keys every month to be given away. So Bradley will ask questions, or you'll ask questions to Bradley during the talk, and he'll tell you if you want a key. They're absolutely amazing. They give you a full license to any of the JetBrains software. So if you need like an ultimate edition of IntelliJ or WebStorm or any of those amazing tools, it's a great way to get hold of it. So a big thanks to both JetBrains and OfficeIn for their support of the user group every month. And then finally, from my side, the user group also runs a conference once a year, like a full one-day big event. It's called DevConf, if you've never heard of it. And it happens on the 12th of May in Johannesburg and the 14th of May in Cape Town. We have 35 speakers from all over South Africa and the rest of the world. We've just announced our keynote speaker this week is Chris Tite, who's well-experienced business lead from... We go and click the mute button again. From entails, and he's going to be talking about how to be a better developer and work with AI. And it sounds like it's going to be a great sort of keynote. We also have a whole lot of other talks ranging from everything from security to team management to how to upskill yourself to deep dives into Kotlin and microservices and all kinds of things. It's really fantastic. We hear about the numbers today was about 55% sold out for Cape Town and 67% sold out for Johannesburg. So if you are looking to get tickets, probably want to try and arrange them now, because they'll definitely be sold out by the time the event runs around. So with that, I want to hand over to Bradley now. I've been privileged to know Bradley for more than 10 years, because he's one of the co-organizers of the Developer User Group. And before that, I think I knew Bradley. We met through like some stuff at Intellect, where it was absolutely amazing tech lead there. And he's done all kinds of things over his career. He's done the CTO role and now doing the founder role. So yeah, I'm very excited about this talk today. I was saying before the event started, about 18 months ago, I was working with a company and we had to do the SOC 2 compliance there, and seeing $15,000 bills like a year is not abnormal. So I'm so excited to hear how to avoid that. I just wish I'd known this sort of 18 months ago. So yeah, thank you so much, Bradley, and over to you.
Cool. Thanks, Rob. Thanks for that intro. Let me share my screen and then we can get going with this. Let's go. Okay, is that coming up there?
Yeah, it is.
Great. Excellent. Cool. Okay, cool. So SOC 2, it's one of those things that kind of lands on your desk one day, and it's not something you really go out looking for. Like, you know, you might go out looking for a latest framework or new tool, but SOC 2 normally gets enforced upon you. But it's something a lot of companies have to deal with when they want to sell to bigger companies, especially companies that have liability. So like banks or insurance companies or, communications, anywhere they store your data or process your information or have a lot of B2B contracts. So SOC 2 what does it actually stand for, just to start with? It stands for System and Organizations Control 2. So we've got to think, what happened to number 1? Well, there's a number 1, and those system and organization controls are for financial controls. And this system and organization controls number 2 is more for your IT and access control and data handling stuff. So that's why it's number 2. It's not like a second version or anything. There's just a whole set of these things. There's also SOC 3s. But strangely enough, that's easier than SOC 1 or 2. But SOC 2 is normally where you're going to get landed as an IT person or a developer. So it's an attempt at standardizing IT security audits. And for some reason, it's run by the American Institute of Chartered Accountants. So when you get audited, you're probably going to get audited by a CPA, so an accountant. So the way to think about it is they're going to be kind of in a chartered accountant mode first, auditor mode first, and then they know some parts about IT, but it's not really their first kind of love, I guess. But it's run by them because they're very used to running audits, and there's quite there's important things to do when you run an audit to make sure that they're actually credible. So that's why they run it. They've got, professional insurance, they've got professional standards, they've got a professional body, and we got none of that in software development. So they kind of saw the gap in the market there, and they run the audits. So you'll generally be dealing with accountants, and they'll be running it like they run other audits as well. So why would you need it? If you're selling to larger enterprises, particularly big financials and that, in the US it's very big. So you'll probably need to do it. If you're selling in the EU, they'll also accept SOC 2s, but they also got another one called the ISO 27001. They're very similar kind of frameworks. But the SOC 2 originated in the US. So the type of companies, besides the financials, is anyone that's handling sensitive information, personal info, etc. And it's no longer just in the US. It's becoming a world standard because it's a little bit like it spreads. Let's say, if one company does a SOC 2, the easiest way for them to prove that their supply chain is also compliant is just to ask all their suppliers to supply a SOC 2 to them. So it kind of trickles down the train pretty quickly, and soon enough, everyone's has to do a SOC 2 or equivalent. But SOC 2 is generally the standard that you'll be hitting in the US at least. Okay, so now just to make it a bit more confusing, in SOC 2, there's actually 2 types. There's a type 1 and a type 2. We've got a hand up there. Hey, Muzi.
Hey, Bradley.
Yes.
I wanted to ask, so what about ISO 27001, the European equivalent? Are you saying that SOC 2 is going to override that? So then if you have a SOC 2, you don't need to have that? Or do you need to get both?
You generally don't need to get both. Most places will accept one or the other. They're very, like I said, they're quite similar in what they cover, especially in the SOC 2 base category, which is the security category. Then they cover the same thing. The SOC 2 has got extra categories as well that you can opt into, and we'll get into that. But I don't think it will override it, but I think it will probably be a little bit more, on a world scale, a bit more popular, because so much business is done in the US, and there's so much, there's so much information around it, and there's so many auditors that are set up to do that for the SOC 2 that it's generally a little bit, I guess it's a bit more popular out there. But no, it's not going to replace the ISOs. The Europeans love bureaucracy, and they definitely love checklists. So ISO is not going anywhere. But even in the EU, they will accept a SOC 2 because you can map it to an ISO 27001 quite easily.
Okay, thanks for that. So if you just get a SOC 2, then you should be good in Europe as well.
Yeah, 100%.
Thanks.
Cool. Okay, so the SOC 2's got two different types. It's got a type 1 and a type 2. So the type 1 is just a static analysis, really. So they have a look they just trust that you say you're going to do the things, and they look at your plan basically, but they don't look at how it actually operates in reality. There's the type 2, they actually audit over a time period. It's normally like 3 months to a year. So we'll say like average 6 months, but the minimum you can do it is over 3 months. And then generally the maximum is a year. So they look how everything works in practice. So then they'll go and say, okay, 2 months ago, let's have a look at your PRs. And let's make sure that there was a code review. So they'll ask for evidence that you're doing it. Whereas the type 1 is just kind of like a pinky promise that you hope to do it. So the type 1 is not really accepted by customers, except as a stopgap. If you've got a plan, if you're using it to get to a type 2. Now, if you're a small company, you generally don't need to do a type 1 because you're small enough to be able to implement a type 2 within a few months if you put a bit of effort behind it. The type 1 is normally for bigger companies where it's difficult to roll out new changes, and you got to get people on board. So the first, you do it in stages. The first one would put the policies into place, then you try implement them in different departments or different ones, and then eventually you'd have full coverage, and then you'd be able to do a type 2. But if you're a small company, let's say like under 200 people, you can normally jump into a type 2 straight away. That saves you a bit of bucks because there's generally not that much cost difference between the two. The auditors like to charge the same amount. Okay, cool. So let's start cracking open this box called SOC 2 and see what it actually consists of. So there's TSPs, which stands for Trust Service Criteria. So you see, it doesn't quite match up, but that's because TSPs used to stand for something else. Now they stand for Trust Service Criteria, and they didn't change the acronym. So it's just one of those weird things. You think accountants would be able to go back and change things, but they don't. And inside the Trust Service Criteria, there's 5 categories: security, availability, confidentiality, privacy, and processing integrity. Now, out of those, the only mandatory one is the security one. So that's the one that you have to do if you do a SOC 2. The other ones are all opt-in, and there's different requirements. So security is the most popular one. Availability is the next most popular one. And then if you're doing things like health data or any really sensitive information, then you're going to go and look at the confidentiality one. And then privacy would be more if you kind of operating, let's say, public platforms. And processing integrity is if it's really important that the results of your processing is 100% correct. So you can imagine if you're running like a bank or something, and you want to make sure that all the transactions happen correctly. But normally you don't have to do these. And remember, you can also add these on each year. So my advice for most companies would be do the minimum in the first year because there's enough to think about. And then if your customers really need the other stuff, you can add it on as you go along. So security is the one that we'll be focusing on in this presentation. Okay, so you can go read more of this if you're really, really bored at night. But they've got on the ARCPA website, they've got all of the information on this stuff. Okay, so now we've got a categories. Categories expand into criteria within the categories. And there's a lot, and it will scare you, but don't get scared for too long. This is some of it, and then this is some more of it, and it carries on like that for some time. And then you might think, okay, well, I can read a few pages of these and figure out what to do there. But wait, there's more. So each of these little criteria expand into things called points of focus. And these points of focus are things that you're supposed to basically hit for each of these criteria. Now, the one thing you'll notice about this is that it's not very specific language. They don't tell you exactly what to do. They don't say you must run Git and it must be run here, and this is exactly how your merge process must work and everything. They don't say things like that. They give you these guidelines, and then you and the auditor have to hash out basically what's acceptable within this framework. So that is one of the advantages of SOC 2, is that it's very adaptable to your particular organization and how you do business and everything. As long as the auditor kind of thinks that it's you hitting these points of focus, they don't really mind how you do it. They don't mind if you use a particular tool or you documented it in the exact particular way or anything like that. So it's not very prescriptive in the implementation. Okay, cool. So yeah, so each of those criteria, and there's a whole lot of them, they each expand. Sorry, I went back too far. They each expand into points of focus. So you can see there's quite a few things to hit, and you got to track that. Yeah, so we got like 20 odd there, and then a whole lot of points of focus. Okay, so we've got that now. We've got the idea of what's inside there. What do we actually need to do? Because this is a big problem. If you're hitting this for the first time and your team says, okay, we got to get this done in the next few months, it's very easy to actually overdo it. So we're going to go look through what you kind of actually need to do, and figure out what's the minimum way. I mean, we only do the MVP for the first run. You don't want to do the whole 9 yards. Okay, so because it's vague and open-ended, we actually need to map these criteria and points of focus to concrete activities that you can actually do every day. So the normal path to do that is first to come up with some policies, then you map them to controls, then you map those to, out of the controls, you get some procedures, which are things you got to do on a regular basis, and then you get your everyday actions that you can do. So basically, the company should come up with some principles and standards and show that they can effectively use them. That's the whole crux of the thing. So getting things in place. Firstly, policies, procedures, risk management, training, reporting, monitoring, logs, practice and processes, and rehearsing disaster and security scenarios. These are your main areas that you're going to have to get in place. And then we'll go into each of these and what you have to do in them. So the main policies that you want to get into place are this set. So you want a code of conduct. You probably already have one. Information security policy, which is just like who can access what, how systems should be secured, things like password policies, enforcing 2FA, all that kind of stuff. So these are written documents, right? Then you'll have things about disaster recovery. What happens if things go wrong? Who should be informed? What's the general process that happened there? Same thing with security incident response. And security incident response is mainly about if there's a data breach or there's an intruder on your system, or maybe a laptop or hard drive gets stolen or goes missing, that kind of stuff. So loss of data or integrity there. And then you'll have privacy policies, and you'll see that on basically every company's website. They got a privacy policy at the bottom. You need to have one of those too. Then you have to have a risk assessment policy. So just a way to think about risk, how you rate risk, and then what your remedies are for risk. You need a software development life cycle policy, and you probably already have one of those. If not written down, you probably have general operating principles, which you just need to document. And then you need like an equipment policy to say how assets are accessed, who's got access to them, and how you secure them. So those main things there. Okay, so procedures. After you get your policies in place, you probably need some procedures, and you can make up a list of them. And the easy way to do it is to just put them on a schedule in whatever your ticketing app is. Maybe you use GitHub issues or ClickUp or something like that, or
Sorry,
Linear.
the screen sharing is gone.
Oh, yeah.
Steady.
Okay. Let me put that back. What happened there? Let me switch off my camera. Maybe I'm killing all the bandwidth. Okay, cool. After the policies, you need these procedures. So, like I said, the easiest way just to put them in a recurring ticket. Oh, is it disappeared again? Oh, my computer is not playing. Let's just try this. Screen share entire screen. Okay, so if it remembers that, I'm just going to. Okay, cool. We got. And what you want to do is just schedule those tickets for regular events. So you'll see that some of them are on the are quarterly, and some of them will be monthly, and some of them are every year, and some of them are just when things happen. So you'll need to do these kind of activities when on a regular schedule. So, but it's also not enough just to do them. You've got to document them. So that's why it's quite a good idea to open tickets for them, because you can take screenshots and meeting minutes or screen recordings, and you can pop them in, because your auditors will say, okay, cool. You know that you needed to do your user access review every month. Let me just see for February's, can you show me that? And then the easiest way to do it is just to PDF the ticket and show it to them. So you're just going to make sure that you got screenshots with timestamps in, and make any notes, for example, if you add people or remove people. Okay, cool. So putting it into practice. Now we've got policies and procedures. Let's try to put this into practice. First of all, let's do our risk exercise, a risk management exercise. So what we can do there is you need to document all your assets, virtual or physical. So, you might have an EC2 instance. You need to list that, say what it's for, say who the risk owner is, say who the asset owner is. And the difference between those is the risk owner is normally the guy that signs off of it at the top, and the asset owner is normally the person that does the day-to-day operations on it. In a small company, it might be the same person. If you got a founder, CTO, or engineer, they're probably both those roles. But generally, your risk owner is going to be an exec, so someone with a C in their name, in their title, and then the asset owner is the person that actually does the work. And then you got to identify threats to it, and then score it against a likelihood and consequence. And then you kind of combine those likelihood and consequence scores to see what your overall risk rating is. And then you got to, for all those things as well, while you're doing it, is just list normal security compliance. The basic ones are passwords, if you got 2FA, if it's got audit logs enabled, all that kind of thing. There might be specific ones for your scenario. So, for example, an entry in your risk register could look something like this. You could have, the asset name. So you got a Docker Hub running, you got a risk owner, and you got an asset owner. You must just be explicit about who owns it. Then you can list some threats. These are just obviously example ones. Then you'll say what the consequence of it is. So that's like, what is it going to do to your business if it happens, or to clients' data, or your reputation, or something like that. And then the likelihood of it happening. And you can use your own scale here, but generally this is what you do. Then you add them together. And if you reach a threshold, then you got to address it. So generally in this case, if it's over 2, you have to address it in some way. And then you can say how you address it. And then just have your other kind of compliance checks there. that you're meeting those criteria. Okay, cool. Then what you also have to do, this is like kind of things that people don't really like doing, and it's also not that fun. But if you do it, if you do it the way that makes sense for your company, then it can actually be useful. So the first thing you have to do is just train all employees on basic information security. So that's just like, don't email sensitive things, beware of phishing, malware, don't plug in external drives, the basic stuff that I think most people understand. But you just got to reiterate that. Don't share passwords and make sure that encrypted sensitive information is encrypted. Taking care of physical security, and then anything else particular to your line of work. Now, you'll have to record evidence of training. So you'll either have to get people to sign a register or use one of those online platforms where it's recorded as well. But this is the kind of basic thing, but it might be a good idea, if you're running a team of developers, there's other security things that you could throw in, and it could actually be quite useful and interesting. Like you could put coding security in, you could put like things around penetration testing methodologies or AR security, all that kind of stuff. So you can actually put some useful things in, but you do have to cover the basics as well. Okay, cool. Then the next thing you got to make sure you got in place, which most people already do, you just got to make sure that it's set up and actually operating and people are monitoring it. You got to get some reporting and monitoring and logs going. So the easiest way is to get some centralized app log going, maybe Datadog, Loggly, or something like that you can build a nice dashboard out of, and you should easily be able to trace events across system boundaries. So that's why you kind of want a centralized log. So if something happens and it's going to have knock-on effects, or if there's a security breach especially, you want to be able to trace how it's affected the systems. So yeah, centralized logging is quite important. And then you need application monitoring for resource usage and making sure that the systems aren't going to fall over, that you've provisioned enough resources. So infrastructure, you probably want to get CloudWatch or something if you're on AWS, but most of the stuff you can also route through if you get a centralized system like Datadog. Then for security or threat monitoring, they'll generally want to see some kind of intrusion detection system. So this is basically looking at if there's unusual access patterns, if someone's trying to get in, it's a bit beyond a firewall. So, seeing if there's unusual ways that data's been moving in your system. So on AWS, there will be guard duty. On Azure, there's I think Defender for cloud, and there's third-party ones as well. But generally, they'll want to see something like that running. And then for your physical laptops, they'll want to see that you've got management running there. So Intune or Jamf or something like that. So that's what you need to get running there. And then you need to set up, once you get these logs going in, what you need to do is set up some alerts and make sure that they go to people and that they're acknowledged in some way. So, people go, okay, cool, there was this, I investigated it. It was this reason, it was a false positive, or yeah, we know that was something we're doing, or oh, this needs an investigation, and go down that. So yeah, setting up the alerting and making sure that you can show who's getting those alerts and that they've been acted on is important. That's the part that's normally missing. Normally there's a Datadog running in the background, or there's some logs, but it's not actually alerting people, or at least people aren't looking at it. That's the one thing that you normally have to get in place. Okay, cool. So around development, what kind of practice and processes do we need there? So you'll need a coding standard, and then the easiest is just to use something off the shelf. I think most people do that now. They'll look at some kind of code spec and use that. And then you'll need to set up CI or automated builds, test and deploys. If you don't use CI, you'll need a very you'll need to have a documented process somehow to show that you actually are doing activities like testing and proving when things get deployed and who's got access to deploy it. So it really does make sense to set up a CI and automated builds with testing and automated deploys in, because it's very easy to show an audit trail of that. Like I said, SOC 2 is not very prescriptive, so they're not going to ding you if you don't have it automated, but then they want to see documentation of the whole path of each event that happened to it. So that's just going to cause a lot of, it's going to cause a lot of admin. So this is a thing that makes sense to get up. And then what you'll have to do is use pull requests as well. You can't just have people merging code in. Most people have got pull requests set up nowadays, I think. So that's fine. So you got to make sure you got a pull request, and you got to make sure that someone other than the code author reviews the changes. So real kind of code reviews happening there. That's something they do check on. And then you got to separate your environments. That's another thing that I think sometimes in the early days, there's not really that much separation, but even if it's a small box that's not running all the time, just try have separate environments there and make sure that you don't have live data leaking back to dev machines or QA environments. And then use role-based access. Make sure people only have access that they really need. You shouldn't be sharing a root account on AWS. You shouldn't, not everyone needs to be a super admin on every single system. That being said, if you got 4 devs and they're all admins, that's fine. Just make sure that, like the salesperson is also not an admin as well, someone that doesn't actually need access there. So, and then what you also need to do is just set up a vulnerability scanning on your repos. You need vulnerability scanning in general over infrastructure and code. And vulnerability scanning on repos is a fairly cheap and easy thing to get in place. There's some free tools you can use, like Bandit for Python, or there's .NET scanners that are free. There's some low-cost SNCC plans. And if you want like the gold standard, then you can use things like CodeQL on GitHub, which is pretty impressive. Sorry, I just went back too many slides again. Let me just go back. Yeah, what makes me do every point there? Okay, cool. So when it comes to infrastructure, things to get going there is automated data backups. This is something that they do check, that you got a backup plan and that there are the backups in place. And they're going to also check that you got redundancy in other ways if you need it. So some systems you might judge that you don't actually need it on. If it goes down, you could easily rebuild it, say from a Docker image, for example, EC2 or something like that. But if there is something that will take a lot of effort or time to rebuild, then you should have redundancy in place there. They're going to check that you've got encryption. This is normally by default now, but make sure that your workstations, your laptops have encryption on. File Vault on Mac OS or Bitdefender on Windows. And that might mean for some people's laptops in the company, you might need to get new ones, because some of the lower end ones don't have TPS chips and can't really run Bitdefender with any speed. Then you'll have to, on your infrastructure, just set up your firewalls and VPCs and security groups. So they're going to check that things are isolated, that your database isn't on the internet, that you've got security groups or firewall rules, as it's called in other places, and that you got your VPCs going. And you got to lock down public access where it's not necessary. So make sure that there's not unnecessary access to your S3 buckets in particular, that there's no file listing or directory listing going on there as well, on ones that don't need it. Obviously, there's public assets, that's fine. But separate those things out and do a review of those, quarterly, to make sure things aren't exposed. And then you'll need to set up antivirus and malware detection if you're running raw servers. If you're running things like containers, that's normally taken care of by the host. But if you're running an EC2, then it's probably a good idea to run some kind of malware scanner on there. And once again, it's important to do it on your laptops and work machines as well. And then also make sure that you got 2FA on everything that supports it. That's an easy one for them to check, and it's also an easy one to implement. So yeah, it's a quick win. Okay, around the HR side, now if you're a small team, you probably don't have separate HR and you're probably hiring people yourself. What you have to do is just make sure you got an org chart so people know how information flow and how responsibility is delegated. So that's just a quick thing to sketch up. And then you have to have structured performance reviews. In small companies, this is normally a very informal thing, but you have to document it and show that it occurs regularly. How you actually run it is not particularly important to SOC 2. They don't care if you use OKRs or if you use normal kind of quarterly objectives or yearly objectives. They just want to see that you have some kind of review process in place. And it's generally at least annually. And then you'll need a job description for each role. That's pretty easy to get in place, and have an onboarding and offboarding checklist for when people join or leave. This is once again quite an easy thing just to set up in your ticketing system. Maybe ClickUp or GitHub issues and just put subtasks underneath it. This is one thing that a lot of companies fall apart on. Even if you read SOC 2 reports from like GitHub or Amazon, they'll normally call out, well, not normally, but often there's a call out for someone's access wasn't removed quick enough, or there wasn't a documentation of when they joined, or something like that. So this is quite important. It's an easy one to get wrong, and then you're going to get exceptions on your report. So you got to have documented onboarding and offboarding. So for onboarding, generally you need to do some kind of background check. The easiest to do is just to do a criminal check. In South Africa, there's things like Huru, and overseas there's other agencies that will do that. And then have some kind of formal system access request procedure. It can be a Google form. It could be like a little form on Slack, but just make sure that someone signs off on system access. Cool. And getting into the end of it is from the company governance side, they're also going to be looking at things here. So generally, you'll need an independent board. So they're going to look for someone on the board that's not operationally involved in the company. If it's a very small company and there's, like it's just two founders, there's no external investors or anything like that, you can get away with it by not having an independent board member. But generally, if there are more people involved than just the immediate founder, they will ask to see a board. Or if there's some kind of a fiduciary duty, a regulated industry or something like that, they'll generally want to see some independent people on the board. And the board's job is to review org charts, make sure that security reviews are done. So they'll look at pen test results, look at your risk reviews, and the board needs to sign off on those each year. So that's what you should do there is just get meeting minutes from the board report, from the board meeting where they did that. The easiest way to do it is generally just to put together a presentation with all those things in, your security scan results, your risk assessment, everything like that, and just send it to them and get them just to reply on an email, say, looks good, or here are my questions. And then you can use that as your evidence that the board has been informed about these things. Okay, so just going a bit more into security testing, you'll need to have a penetration test and web app scan done a minimum each year to find unknown risks and vulnerabilities. You should probably also do it if you make any kind of significant architectural change or big feature on the system as well. And then they'll also want to make sure that you've tested your disaster recovery plan and security incident plans at least annually. And these, once again, must be documented. You must show what you did, the people involved, and the scope of it. They can just be tabletop plans, so you don't have to go like full on pull all the servers off the rack or like shut down everything and see what happens. You can kind of just work through a plan and maybe do a small scale kind of enactment. The main thing they want to see is the coordination, people involved, so you can simulate communications, how you inform customers, how you inform, if you need to inform authorities, for example, on security incident plans, if you're in that kind of place that you need to provide information to authorities. They're going to also want to see how you capture logs and evidence of things that went wrong so that you can do investigations afterwards. Okay, cool. So the summary is there's a hell of a lot to get in place, and the difficulty is getting it documented. So the easiest thing to do is just really set up tickets on a ticketing system that you regularly capture these things. Normally, a lot of these things will be done, but they're not documented and recorded. So that's why you want to set that up. So it's ongoing. It's unfortunately not something that you're going to do once and then forget about it. You got to kind of keep doing this all the time, because they will audit over a whole year when they do the type 2. So bank on a few months to a year, depending on the size of your company, to get everything going for the first round and get used to operating with it, and figure out the ways that work best in your company. And it's a good idea to get an auditor involved even before you're going to do an audit, just so that you can work through the policies and procedures and controls with them to see that they're happy with it. And then it's sometimes helpful just to get someone who's done it before, just to come in and guide you to set up things and do a once over, do an internal review, those kind of things, or just to make sure things are getting done on a regular basis. Okay, cool. So I think that's the brief guide. Is there any particular questions that people have or want me to dive into a bit more? Okay, there's no hands, so I will. Oh no, there we go. There's someone.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, dive in a bit more, and then I was also gonna ask about what about there's these security companies like Banter that offers, you to get SOC 2 certification. What do you think of them?
Yeah, there's quite a few of those. Vanta and Drata are probably the two biggest ones, but there's a whole lot of them. I would say for a small company, it's very expensive, and you can just do it by setting up regular tickets and tracking these things on your ticketing system. I don't think it's necessary for small companies. I think it's very useful if you're a larger company, if you're a big org, say like in the hundreds of people and above, or thousands, where you need to delegate, where there's many departments and you need to coordinate across many different groups and you need to delegate things out, then it becomes useful. Or if you're doing a lot of frameworks, so for example, if you were doing SOC 2 and HIPAA and some of the other frameworks, then it kind of makes sense, because you don't want to do the work twice. But if you're a small company starting out to do SOC 2, it's enough just to make sure you track everything in tickets. That's generally what I've found is you can set it up and you can run it for pretty much for free on your ticketing system. There's a lot of templates out there for policies and procedure lists, so that's generally easy to get hold of, and that will tell you what you need to do. I'll also post something just to the meetup group on suggested policies, procedures, and lists, and you can go have a look there as well. So that would be somewhere to get it out of. But Vanta's good, but I don't think it's good for small companies. The other reason, which is a bit counterintuitive, is Vanta and those kind of things will make you do too much on your first audit. So there's, like I said in the beginning, it's a bit open-ended what you need to do for SOC 2. And if you get something like Vanta, it really is made for bigger companies like enterprises. And they're going to have you doing a whole lot of things that probably don't even make sense at your scale. So you'll still need someone to sift through, or you'll need to take the time to sift through all the default controls they give you and all the default tests they put in place to figure out what you don't actually need. Yeah, so does that kind of answer that?
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, cool. Then we've got a question here from Brian who says, how periodically do you do app testing or web testing for the platform a company might have? So generally, you want to do a full pen test at least annually, or if there's significant changes to the code or architecture or infrastructure. And you should do your web application test at the same time as well. So when you do your pen test, you generally want to do your web application test and infrastructure pen test, just to make sure that your environment's set up correctly and that there's no gaps in your application that you haven't thought of. The main things to check before your pen test, and generally put it in your kind of end-to-end tests or your automated tests, is to check that that your roles and your access controls are working. So, for example, that people can't log in and see other people's data, that there's no data leaks. If I'm authed on one user, I shouldn't be able to get to another user. I shouldn't be able to escalate privilege if I'm a normal user to get to admin privilege. So those are the kind of main things that you should be looking out for and getting tested there. But yeah, generally yearly, you want to do that. Okay, cool. Should we give out some JetBrain prizes? I'll ask some questions, and then whoever answers, just put your hand up or comment. Well, let's see who comments first. Let's see. Let's ask a question. Which category is compulsory to do in a SOC 2? This is for JetBrains prize.
Security?
That's it. Wizzy wins the first JetBrain prize. Just pop if you can just, you can email us your contact details. It's just admin@developerug.org.za. I'll just put that in the chat as well. And then let's think of another question that I can ask here is, how many types of SOC 2 are there? Anyone got that? Two types. Okay, cool. E's got a prize there. Excellent. Okay, so we got Tumi and E. Okay, cool. And then, okay, the last one, let's think of something over here. How often do you need to do a disaster recovery test? What's the minimum time? Annually. Brian's got it. Cool. So we got Tumi, Brian, and E are our winners for our JetBrains prize today. Can you three just pop an email through to, where's this chat here? Let me just get it. If you can just pop an email through to admin@developerug.org.za, or there we go. I've just posted it in chat. So yeah, Brian, E, and Tumi, if you can just email us, and then we'll send JetBrains license to you guys. Cool. Any other questions, or should we wrap up for today? I think that's probably enough SOC 2 for one evening, right?
Oh, I was gonna ask, what sort of, because you talked about, I think, just free tools as well that are available, for this. I thought maybe there's gonna be something. I think you mentioned templates, but what about tools?
Okay, so tools, there are free ones out there. Let me just get something out there. If you're really developer bent, there is stuff. This one is kind of out of production now, but I have found that it's pretty much the most useful one. Let me just get it open here. Comply by DM. And I've forked this myself as well and used it. So if you want to get a forked version, just give me a shout as well, and I'll share it with you. But there are a few. This one I have used a lot, mainly because it's
Sorry,
easy.
if you share your screen, we can't see. Hey.
Oh, sorry. Let me try that again.
Thanks.
Screen. Okay, are we any luck now? Yeah, there we go. Okay, cool. So this is a good one. Strong DM comply. These things don't move fast, so that it doesn't really matter. And what this thing basically does is it gives you your templates for your policies and procedures, and then it also it's just a little integration with GitHub to make your issues on a cron job. So this is like a free one. There are more graphical kind of things out there that you can use. I like this because you're not putting your data anywhere that you're not already putting your data. You probably already got a whole lot of stuff in GitHub. You're not sending a whole lot of company stuff out somewhere else. And on free tools, do you know where it's going to? Bigger tools like Vanta and that, you do know where it's going to, but this is probably the easiest and the quickest. If you're a developer, the easiest one to get going, and then you can manage everything in Markdown files. Like, for example, they've got, let's just see. For example, you'll see they've got all your policies in Markdown files, and it's really easy to modify and keep a track of when they were changed. So you can look at the Git log to show your auditors that you updated these each year or whatever like that. So this is a good way of doing it, even if you just take inspiration from it. But I'd say this is pretty much all you need if you're a small team. If you're a larger org, you might need something more. But if you just track it in GitHub and you've got these basic things in place, you should be good. Cool. Anything else? Okay, cool. Let's do that. Cool. Are we good to wrap up? Thanks for joining, everyone. And let's just see, Brian, Tumi, and E, congratulations on winning your prize. Just remember to drop us an email so that we get that prize to you. Thanks for joining, everyone, and hope to see you at the next one. Cheers. Bye.
Cool. Cheers. Bye.
Thank you, Brad. Cheers.
Bye.
Thank you. Cheers. Bye. Very informative session.